joining us. My name's Vicky Bailey, and I'm going to take you through probably about 20 minutes of they're really top tips at the moment. They're stuff that can be practiced, and I'm available afterwards if you need more support. So just really quickly, a couple of sort of housekeeping things. There's a chat button on your screen, which I think most of you have found by saying, hi, this is me, and I've joined the webinar. If you have any questions, please either put them on the chat box and we'll keep them for the end, or when we get to the end, put them through on the chat box then. And if you wish to share them, Claire Taylor is supporting us through this process and is an absolute genius at marketing and does all of that for me. So she will sort of screen the questions and probably ask them to me. If you want them shared with the whole of the attendees, there's a drop down box so you can actually share that with all of the attendees as well. So you're very welcome to ask questions. It's very relaxed, so anything that you ask, any question you have is valid. So please be brave and use this moment to ask those questions. So I'm going to just set up my share screen. Just a second. Here we go. So today we are going to focus on settling anxiety, and I think you cannot, anyone in this environment cannot not be anxious. And then I think because of the community that we sit in with SCAD, there's probably even more heightened anxiety that's around. So just a little bit of introduction to who I am and my journey, and then we'll get into the crux of the webinar. So my name is Vicky Bailey, as I said, and I'm a psychotherapist, coach and trainer, and I specialise in mental health and emotional well-being. And I have the privilege of doing that. I run a company, I love what I do, and you know, it's one of those things that at the moment everybody's talking about mental health. Everyone talks about mental health anyway, and I think even more so now at the moment. So if these webinars can help you and give you a little bit of light relief and some tips on how to move through any of your own angst, then that's fantastic. We're going to run a small series. So I am within your community, although you probably haven't seen me on the Facebook community page, because I choose to stay off social media with what I do for a living. So for my work purposes, I'm on some social media with my company, and privately I stay off it. So I had my SCAD last year, which is quite weird to say because I can't believe where the time's gone. So 22nd of May last year. The screen that you have in front of you is that's my partner Enton and myself when I was in hospital. And the reason I took the photo, not because I thought, oh good, I must take a photo of myself in hospital. We were due to be at a festival that weekend, and so my friends were very lovely and sent lots of photos of them enjoying themselves at the festival, which was kind of a bittersweet. So I sent them a photo back of going, and this is me. The photo in the middle is of Enton and my girls, Katie and Sophie, and myself, and that was on the SCAD walk in September. So my goal from May to September was to be able to do the longer route, and I managed that, so that was fantastic. And then there's just some bluebells there, which are one of my favourite things in the world. So that was some of the walking that we'd done during the bluebell season, probably this time last year. So in terms of recovery, I'm fine. I was just planning to go back to work full time when coronavirus overtook that decision. So I'm still not going back to work for a little while and doing some bits in a voluntary capacity to support a few communities that I sit in. So I've had 2 meetings with Dr. Adlam, who's my consultant, and he's happy with my progress. And I'm sure, like many of you, I have been and am still on that roller coaster of recovery. So that's a little bit about me, just to say that I'm alongside you in probably more ways than one. So what we've done with these webinars is we've introduced the concept of a book club, whether you choose to take us up on this. So I shared a book last week that's my current favourite book. And then this is one of my all-time favourite books, The Dalai Lama's Cat. Which is just, it's just delightful. It's a trilogy. It's written through the eyes of the cat, the Dalai Lama's cat, and it's got some fantastic messages in it. it's a great story at a light end, and then it does have some very lovely messages and spiritual messages in it at the other end of it. So it works really, really well, and is so well written by David Michie. And there's a quote there for you to read from it, which I thought possibly reflected that maybe a positive thought around some of the anxieties that are going on for people at the moment. So I'll just give you a second to read that. I think at the moment, the collective consciousness that's going on and watching how the government are guiding us through this is a very heightened environment of angst and fear. And they are very natural reactions to situations. So many of you will have heard of the words flight, fight, and freeze. That is an instinctive reaction that we have as human beings to any sort of life-threatening or major incident in life. And they have their place. They are a survival technique. And then there are times that those reactions happened and they're not so useful. And we need to be able to maybe have some strategies and some little, I heard someone call it brain hacks the other day, that would help us just calm some of those innate feelings that rise in us around some of the fear that may be there, the angst that is there for you, both as someone that's been through SCAD and is maybe heightened because of that, and also your own personal circumstances and the communities you sit in. So just to let you know, it is going to be a feeling that is there for you. What we're going to start offering you through last week, this week, and the subsequent webinars is some tips and ideas to bring that down and be able to manage it and get a perspective on it. We can't stop it. We can manage and go, oh, okay, right, what do I do with this overwhelming feeling? So where we're up to with that is, I think it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have the feelings. It's okay to know that they're there. So I think one of the things that I talk about when I'm in practice is about leaning into them a little bit. So acknowledging that they're there in the first instance is your first step towards actually moving through them and finding some ways of finding peace and calm around it. So again, the webinar's built around some quotes and some slides that allow you to maybe take what you need from this. And for me, we can only do what we can do where you are at any one moment. So wherever you are in your day, the wave of anxiety or fear or the feeling that you have, I'm using those words, you might have different words and that's okay, might just come across and it's there. I was speaking to a colleague of mine and she says hers seem to come in a pattern of every 2 to 3 hours for her. Some people it's the early hours of the morning. It happens when it happens and that's okay. So what we need to start to recognise is what it's doing, when it's happening, and then some of these tips that we're about to go into to how to manage it for you and allow it to move through and stay calm. So every day is a new beginning, and maybe more so in our community, we understand that. So take a deep breath, smile and start again. And I have to say, smiling is a really big tip that I'd share with you. It will lift you. Even if you just stand in the mirror and smile at yourself, it will lift you. So that smile is quite important. So the first thing we're going to concentrate on is breathing, because the first thing that stops for everybody when we get a bit anxious or the fear kicks in or those big emotions kicked in is we stop breathing. Those flight, fright, fight, intuition, it's like, and of course everyone then goes to me, oh yes, of course I'm breathing. Yes, you are. You absolutely are. Not breathing effectively though. So I'm going to share 2 breathing techniques with you. If you look at a baby in a cot, you will see the baby breathing because their tummies are going up and down. They're breathing brilliantly because actually what we want to be able to do is to breathe into our diaphragm. So your diaphragm is placed just under your rib cage. So if you're sitting comfortably, as they say, my invitation to you now is to, wherever you're sitting, is to put your both feet onto the floor. So we want to ground you through this breathing. So ideally you want to be, if you're lying on a bed, it's fine, it's not a disaster. In an ideal world, I'd guide you towards having both feet on the floor so that you're contacting with the earth. Make sure that you're relaxed. And what I want you to do is to put your hand just below your rib cage and to where your diaphragm is. And before we get into the slide that's there, my invitation to you is to take an in-breath and to push your tummy out with your breath so that you start to notice what it's like to breathe through the lungs, through the rib cage and into the diaphragm, and then release that breath. Now that, when I say to people and someone says take a breath, or you're in a panic attack or something comes across you, is what we're looking for, is that really deep breath into the diaphragm and then the release of that breath. I think you can see the screen. I think you can't see me because I'm sitting here with my hand on my diaphragm demonstrating. So I might just unshare the screen for a minute. No, I won't. I'll just keep going. So I would suggest with your other hand, if you're not sure what to do with it, just pop it on your chest. So what we're going to do now is we're going to breathe in for 4. And out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In for 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to do 3 cycles of this. That's the first cycle. In for 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Into the diaphragm for 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want you to do a cycle on your own while I just gently talk to you. So be mindful, you might feel a little bit lightheaded because when we learn to breathe correctly for the first time, things start moving. The out breath is really, really important because we're actually then giving messages through to the brain, which has released the angst, to say, actually, I'm calming down. And the majority of people always take an in-breath easily, and they find it harder, if you like, to go with the out breath. So the number is greater on the out breath in this method of breathing than it is on the in-breath. So, if you take an in-breath and you're like, I'm really struggling with that out-breath, use a sigh. That's a trigger to actually help you release the breath. So another little top tip on here is to give a sigh. So if you're struggling with this and you've met this for the first time, sighing is a really good introduction to this process. If the numbers are too great for you and you're feeling a little bit lightheaded, reduce them on a scale. So go in for 3 and out for 5. Always have your out breath as a longer than your in breath, and make sure that they are connected, that you're not holding your breath in between. And if you did that, maybe once, maybe gift yourself twice a day in a conscious way, and practice it, then I think if you do have a surge of emotion, which maybe pushes you more towards panic, high anxiety, this is something then that is within your DNA that you have started to learn away from those moments to allow you to use it in the moment. So it's like anything, you know, for those of us that are a bit sporty, or those of us that are arty or in the theatre or whatever, we have to practice, we have to learn our craft. So this is something that I would invite you, if this works for you and you like this method, to maybe practice when you're not in a heightened state. So I'm now going to show you a second method, which is called the 4x4 breathing technique, or box breathing. And if you glance across the slide, you'll notice on the second and the fourth point that I've faded 3 and 4 out, because again, this is quite a big breathing technique. So let me just talk you through it first. Again, the invitation is to sit comfortably. You can stand if you want. I'm not sure if you're learning to breathe for the first time. Standing is a great idea in case you feel a bit faint. If you want to lie down, it's absolutely fine. The connection with the earth is quite good though, if you can have your feet on the floor. If you inhale for 4 through your nose, and then hold your breath for a count of, and what they're suggesting in the 4x4 is you hold your breath for 4. I think when you meet this for the first time, I would offer that you hold your breath for 2. And then you exhale through your mouth for 4. Then you pause for 2. If you want to push it to 4, that's up to you. and then we repeat. So we inhale through the nose, hold for 2, exhale through the mouth for 4, pause for 2, inhale through the nose. And again, this is a breathing technique that is tried and tested in neuroscience, not going to go there today, that helps to calm the reaction that's happening within your brain and the hormone releases. So again, this is something that will take practice. It may not suit you. It might be that you master both techniques and you use what feels intuitively right in the moment for you. So that's my introduction to 2 breathing techniques. For those of you who have maybe met yoga, you might have slightly different breathing techniques that you've been in yogic breathing, and there is a valid. So when somebody says to you, breathe, maybe these 2 tips can offer you the opportunity to know how to breathe. We need to breathe into the diaphragm, back up through and into the diaphragm. So I want to link that breathing with you into moments of self-compassion, because you do need to look after yourselves first. So I'm just going to let you read this for a second. So, I just need to take my own out breath there. So, what I mean by self-compassion is a majority of us, probably most of us actually, will carry our emotional responses on our body. So we all have a little bit of a gremlin and a weak spot. So we're all people that have come through SCAD. So our hearts are an area that maybe we need to focus on. You may have other areas as well. So for me, to share that with you, my throat is my niggle. So often if I'm a bit low or a bit angsty or I've got some sort of heightened emotion, I get a bit of a niggle in my throat. I have clients that have tummy jumps. So when they feel anxious, it's churning in their tummy. So it's very diverse. It's whatever it is for you. So the offer of self-compassion to combine with the breathing is to focus on that area and to give yourself a hug and to breathe into that area. So what I mean by that is, so for me, because my throat is my area, I might just place my hand very gently around my throat and my neck area. And then probably I tend to put my hand on my diaphragm to remind myself to breathe into it. And I may use one of those breathing techniques to give myself a hug and to focus on the area that is carrying that angst in my body. Now, if it's in more than one place, maybe choose the one that's a bit more heightened at the time. So that self-compassion is hugely, hugely important, because as much as you've got a community around you, in whatever guise that is for you, becoming self-reliant around this is a big gift. So the invitation, and we're not going to practice it now, you can pick this up again and we'll send you the link to it, is to focus on the areas that maybe need a little bit of TLC and a bit of attention in your body that are holding that angst, and to use some of those breathing techniques. And to touch it is to give yourself a hug. If it's not obvious for you, that's okay too. Maybe just put your hand around your chest area as somebody that's been through a SCAD and give your heart a big, huge piece of attention. So breathing and self-compassion are the major things that we wanted to focus on for this webinar today. And we will build over the next couple to offer you further tips around how to manage your fear and anxiety. I think what I want to share with you now is 2 more slides that just offer you something back and suggest that focus on what you can do and let go of the rest. We are in such an unprecedented time at the moment. Some of our choices have been taken away from us, some of our social network, seeing family, going to work, the key things that form identity. For those of us that are still in recovery, you know, some of the routines that we might have established in our recovery may have been taken away from us, cardiac rehab or going out and networking, whatever that looks like for you. So what can you do to adapt to the situation rather than thinking what's gone? So for instance, tonight, is it Friday? Yes, it's Friday, losing track of the days. I've got gin and tonics with my friends via Zoom this evening. We've got early doors still. So we're still in connection and contact. We just can't see each other. We can still enjoy a little bit of a tipple and a bit of a giggle just for half an hour tonight before we all hunker down into whatever box sets we're doing. So really begin to look at what choices you have with what you can do, and just leave the rest. Some of the questions that came up last week were how to stop some of the filters as well. And I would suggest minimise your contact with the outside world on the news if that's something that heightens your anxiety. So focus on what you can do. Maybe allow yourself a limited amount to stay in contact with the news a day. Those sort of things are really important choices. So focus on what you can do and let the rest go. The next one, I just love this. When I discovered that, it gave me permission to have a little bit of a treat every day with my cup of tea. So if nothing else, remember that stressed, spelled backwards, is desserts. So I think that brings us to about 20 minutes. So hopefully that's been okay for you. I'd like to thank you for listening, and we're very happy to take any questions. I know we've had one via email prior to now. Claire, I'm just going to ask you, shall I come out and sharing screen so people can see me? Hang on. There we go. Hi. So is there any questions there at the moment, Claire, or shall I pick the one up from the email?
No, if you want to pick up the one from the email.
Yeah.
I was just saying hi in the chat box, which is really great.
That's fine. Just a second. So we've had an email about a colleague, somebody alongside us that's on the webinar today who's had their second SCAD in February. So I hope your recovery is going well. And I'm going to read the question. I'm not going to share your name because this is recorded. So had your second SCAD in February and would like to ask how to reverse anxiety quickly. So your comparative here is like a car from 0 to 60 seconds. You'd like to go from 60 to 0 to which with anxiety following shock or panic or a build-up of the anxiety. So I think the first thing is I can resonate with that, and I think probably colleagues and people on the webinar can resonate with that. What I'm not going to say to you is there's a quick fix. What I will say to you is, if from today's webinar, and maybe if you have the capacity to come onto the future ones, we're going to offer you tips. Find something that works for you. Find something to focus on. So if it really is escalated, find that focus. Maybe going to the self-hug, maybe giving your attention to your heart and doing 2 or 3 of those breathing breaths within a breathing technique. What it'll do is everything within your body that's a natural reaction will then start to come down into a manageable ebb and flow, rather than the heightened spike and the heightened panic that you will find yourself in. And I really can't emphasize enough that breathing will be, I promise you, it will bring it down. I promise you it will. It does take time and it does take practice. If you need somebody with you, if you have somebody living with you, maybe they need to give you a tip to remember to breathe. So maybe one of the tips around that is to speak to whoever's with you and just say, I've got that feeling again, and then tell them what you need, which might be to remind you to breathe, and then go back in and give that heart a bit of attention. So February's early days, and you've been through this once. You can get through this again, and you've got a great community around you, and you will be fine. So hopefully that answers that question.
We've got a question. We have got another question saying, do you suggest that we do the breathing techniques? Should it be a routine thing 3 to 4 times a day, for instance, or just when we're feeling anxious?
I would, I'm a massive advocate of practice, much to my teenage girls' annoyance. I would suggest if you could do it at least once a day, if you could get into that good habit when you're not in the midst of a panic attack or the anxiety being high, then it becomes within your DNA. So I come from a sports background. So if I give you the analogy, when I was a sports coach, if we were doing drills or you were learning a skill, to go away and practice it between coaching sessions, it becomes within your DNA, then it becomes a natural skill. So this would be the same principle. So if you could maybe get into a lovely habit of saying, actually, I'm going to go 10 minutes and sit somewhere in a space that's lovely for me in my house or my garden or wherever that is for you, and practice it and not wait until you're in the crisis moment, then when anything heightens for you, it will come with more ease. So hopefully that answers the question. In terms of how many times a day, your choice really. It depends how you learn. Definitely once a day. If you can do it a couple of times, also good.
Brilliant. Also, could these tips be used for panic attacks too?
Yeah.
And are they also suitable for children who may be anxious during this time?
I'll go to panic attacks first, and then I'll come to the young people and children. With the panic attacks, I think yes is the immediate answer, because a panic attack is where the heightened emotion has escalated often. Panic attacks, if you're in the midst of it, the last thing you need is a lot of people telling you what to do. So again, to help manage that for self, if you pick some of these tips up and they work for you, remember which ones work for you. And then maybe if you need the external prompt, invite the people in to say, if I'm in that state, please can you remind me to breathe? Please can you remind me to give myself a hug? Please can you remind me to put my feet on the floor? Whatever those tips become for you. So absolutely they can help in a panic attack. People think about brown paper bags. It's all to do with oxygen through your system, and the exhale, if you're holding in, does not allow the blood to be oxygenated correctly. So I won't go into too much of the neuroscience. So the breathing is really quite important, to be honest. So yes, it can help. Can it help children and young people? So I do a lot of work with teenagers. Yes, it can. I think they're stronger and braver than we give them credit for. And so I think offer them this. If they want to work with you and help you, then that's great. I think they're great at giving themselves self-hugs, and I think this is good to build their resilience. So when I'm working with the teenagers that I work with, and I have the privilege of working with, I do all of these techniques with them. I think younger than teenage, go for quick wins. So maybe get their focus on a colour in the room quickly, and then tell them to breathe. So just they need to focus on one thing. So to get them to focus on breathing in the first instance might be too much for younger children. Say, oh, what can you see that's red? Right, let's focus on red. Now let's breathe in and out, and you mirror it with them. That's another technique, is rather than telling them, is to do it with them, and then they will breathe with you. Hopefully that answers that question. Is there any more questions?
Just checking. Yeah, no, that's it.
So I hope today has been useful. Claire will weave her fantastic magic and send me a link, and I will send that out to you all that have attended today and those of people that have registered, and you'll be able to click onto this webinar as and when you need it, really. It's been a delight, and I just hope that it's been useful for you and that you can take something away, and rest assured that you're not on your own, that you will be fine, and we will come through all of this pandemic.